joining our show again this week. We're always happy for people like you, people that are interested in the issues that are happening in our cities. Because it is important for good government that there be a good back and forth between the city council, between the mayors, between the staff, and with the residents of your city. Now, if you haven't watched our show before, each week we'll have someone on from one of the 9 cities in CCX's viewing area to help bring us up to date about what's happening in that particular city. And then, come election year, we'll have candidates on. This year is an odd-numbered year, and Golden Valley is the only one of our 9 cities that has elections in the odd-numbered year. So all we'll have on this year is Golden Valley candidates. But we do encourage you, if you're from Golden Valley, to take down the email and take down the phone number. So if, as we talk about different issues with the candidates that we have here tonight, that if it's one that's important to you, if it kind of resonates with you, take your time to contact the person, check out where they're coming from, because then you'll be better prepared to cast a vote when come up November 7th. But tonight we're very happy to welcome 2 of the 5 candidates that Golden Valley has running, Jillian Rosenquist and Jim Ryan. So we're glad to have 2 of you with us, with time enough for you to share where you're coming from in a number of different areas. We'll start with Jillian, and I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself out to our wider audience.
Great, thank you very much. I'm Jillian Rosenquist, and I've lived in Golden Valley for 15 years with my husband Jeff. We have 3 sons, ages 15, 13, and 9, and they attend the Hopkins Public Schools. My husband is a union contractor. He runs a small family business in Minneapolis. And I'm a lawyer by training. I have a degree from William Mitchell College of Law and practiced intellectual property law for a few years. I stayed at home with my children for a while, and most recently spent 2.5 years at a nonprofit helping low-income inventors find sources of free legal advice so they can help realize their dreams.
Sounds interesting.
I've been active civically for my time in Golden Valley. I started out with the Moms Club of Golden Valley, moved into Meadowbrook PTO work and leading that organization and doing a significant amount of fundraising, as well as all of the other kinds of school volunteering like Art Adventure and things like that. We're active parents in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, Golden Valley Little League, and the other activities that our kids are doing. I also got very active in the League of Women Voters, and before I filed for office was the president of the board of the Golden Valley chapter of the League of Women Voters. And 5 years ago, I was appointed by the City Council to the Open Space and Recreation Commission, and I'm currently vice chair. And I also was appointed to 2 different light rail resident committees. The first was the Station Planning Committee, and the second one was the Citizens Advisory Committee. So I've been very active in the city for all of my years there.
Oh, it sounds
and
like
I'm looking forward to continuing my activity on council.
So plenty of issues to talk about.
Yeah.
I'll let you pick one of these issues and share your thoughts with the people that are out watching us, and then encourage, if any of these issues are important to you, take down phone number and email, because we'll have that up.
Something I'd love to talk about, because I think that it opens the door into bigger issues, is the light rail planning. It's something that, having been very active from a very early period, what we need to think about as a community going forward, now that we know that most likely we will, it's not certain, but most likely we'll be getting a light rail line on the east side of the city, is that how do we create a future city where this form of transportation is accessible to our entire community, and we can do that in a way that is not entirely car dependent. We are also looking at, we've got major employers on the east side of the city. Tenant company is going to be doing some expansion. We have Honeywell as well. We have retail. And so there are lots of opportunities, and we need to do a lot of great resident engagement.
Now, a second issue that you'd like to share your thoughts and ideas on?
I really like to talk about going in that connectivity in our city. I think it's important to think about as part of, and this leads into the comprehensive plan, which, being on the Open Space and Recreation Commission, I've already been extremely active in helping create, really thinking about balancing what we like about our city now and what we need to be in the future to not only attract future residents but retain future residents, remain an accessible city and a better connected city, because we need to think about how we're connected not just by car but also in terms of bikeways, pathways, potentially thinking about things like, even, it sounds crazy now, but driverless cars. How are we going to deal with this in the future? If we're looking at a 20-year plan, we really need to be thinking about those gaps in our systems and the ways that we need to evolve to maintain our vitality.
Is there anything special that you'd like to see the city be doing more than they're doing on the comprehensive plan work so far?
Well,
how do you see that unfolding?
Well, I'm really excited about what the work that has been done, and there's been a tremendous amount of work done on the comprehensive plan already. We've had a lot of resident input. The staff have been working very hard. I know on Open Space and Recreation Commission, we have gone through every single park, every single open space. We've been looking as part of the sidewalk and trail task force. They looked carefully at our entire system. And we then, as a commission, looked at how we can connect our communities and integrate that into our kind of entire ecosystem here in Golden Valley.
And there's still more opportunities for citizen input during this coming year too, right?
Absolutely. The next council will adopt this, and it needs to be submitted to the Metropolitan Council in 2018. So it's certainly not finished. It's certainly still a work in progress, and it is very, very important for the current council and the future council to engage residents to make sure that we really have a plan that we feel is not only representative of who we are now, who we want to be, and it's also something that is realistic.
Yeah, and that takes time.
It does. It takes a lot of time, and fortunately we have an excellent staff, and we have a really, Golden Valley has tremendous community spirit, and the volunteerism and the expertise of our volunteers is impressive. So I feel very confident, but definitely it's something that people need to be very actively involved in. I'm very excited that you have programs like this, because it means that our citizens can find out about who they work with on this and really can be engaged in this very important process.
Yeah, and people from individual cities are interested in what's happening, like you are from Golden Valley, but people from other cities want to know what's happening across the area too.
Well, sure, and you look at an example like the DeCola Ponds development and things like that, where New Hope, which I know is your particular wheelhouse, Crystal, Golden Valley, as well as the Bassett Creek Watershed and the state, and all kinds of other groups are coming together and working on a mutual project for our benefit.
Okay, and pick a third topic for now.
Well, we can talk about that. We can talk about partnerships with other communities. We can talk about water management. And I think the DeCola Ponds, a lot of things come into that. And it's also a TIF district. So I think
why don't you highlight where that is? I mean, because I know and you know, but some of the people out there might not be.
So the DeCola Ponds is an area that, for Golden Valley residents, it's Medicine Lake Road, essentially, and just kind of in that northwest, kind of center, northwest corner of the city.
Off
of Winnetka Avenue and Medicine Lake Road, right by the Dairy Queen and the Walgreens. And so it's an intersection that I think that a lot of people know, but they haven't necessarily known what's going on underneath.
No.
They don't know that there's been substantial flooding problems. They don't know that there's a whole kind of watershed that happens in parts that are visible. A great deal of it is underground.
Yeah, if you live in that area, you know anytime we have a hard rain.
Absolutely.
A 100-year rain, which we tend to have more and more of nowadays.
Absolutely, and with climate change, and we've seen certainly in the past year a lot of dramatic events. I'm really excited about the fact that there's this partnership and that we're being proactive in dealing with water issues. We have 39 houses in Golden Valley that are specifically within that flood zone. And certainly it just impacts all of us, and it impacts water quality, and that's very important regionally. So I'm excited, and I think it is important for the council to be able to work with not only themselves, but also with the other communities and with state officials and staff to make sure that we get problems addressed with a future aspect.
Right. Well, and the water is coming through all three cities, Golden
Yes.
Valley, Crystal, and New Hope. So it's like you don't get to separate your water out from somebody else's water. So you better find a way to work on it
it's not
together.
just Golden Valley's problem.
Right,
It's,
right.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to give you plenty of time so that you could tell the people out there, particularly in Golden Valley, when it comes to going into the election booth on the 7th, why they should vote for you. Give them a pitch.
Would you like me to answer that now, or is Mr. Ryan going to introduce himself?
No, I'll let you do it first and give Jim his time all at one fell swoop too.
Sounds great. I think that Golden Valley residents should feel confident that I've been a very active and involved and informed citizen, and that I'm going into this council race, and I could go on city council ready to work hard for the residents of Golden Valley. Someone who's already been actively engaged in listening to you and figuring out what's important and trying to think of Golden Valley not only now, but the Golden Valley that we want for the future and that we need for the future. I think of it in terms of I want to keep all the things that I like about Golden Valley now, and I think most of us do, but I also want to think about the Golden Valley that my children want to be in. And I want to think about how they're going to get around, how they're going to live, and really try to make sure that we are a city that balances both of those things. I think that I bring a unique set of skills. I think the legal training is something that's very helpful, especially when you're talking about ordinances and laws in different state agencies and government entities. I think that my active involvement has made me someone who's well known to city staff, and you were talking earlier about the necessity of us all working together and knowing each other, and I think that there's something to be said for someone who's been, like me, who has been very active. I know most of the city staff. They know who I am. We have an already established relationship. And I think that going forward, that could be a real asset to getting things done for Golden Valley and making sure that we have the plans in place that we need for the future.
Right. And then just to kind of tie up and go look at it from a different area, part of the whole process of running for office is knocking on doors. What kinds of things are you hearing or learning about from the residents that you talk to as you're campaigning?
Well, I think a lot of times, as they say, the politics is personal, and so when you're door knocking, you hear a lot about people's frustrations that they've had with the city, potentially with permits or things like that. And so it's an opportunity to hear the fact that we need to think and look at our systems and making sure that they're very user-friendly for our residents. Another thing I hear a lot about, especially amongst younger and residents to our community, is that they do want to talk about connectivity, and they want to talk about getting out of their cars. They want to talk about how they can bike around the city, how they can walk around the city, how they can live in a way that they feel is healthier for them, and connect up to the amenities that we do have in the city and that they value, but they don't want to always have to drive to them.
Right. Well, thank you very much for sharing all your thoughts and ideas with our audience out there.
Thank you very much.
And we'll move on to Jim Riot.
Hello.
And so he already has a preview of what I'm going to ask, right?
Oh, I have no clue here.
So I'll let you start too, with the same thing that you introduce yourself out to the wider audience, but most particularly the people from Golden Valley.
Okay. Well, I think I would bring a fresh approach to leadership on the council. I'm the only one that has not run for the office before. But I've always been involved in the community, and my wife and I have lived in Golden Valley for the last 30 years. I don't want to overstate that. But we've raised our 4 children in the area. They're adults now and have moved away. But it's wonderful to go through some of the areas where younger kids are still playing, and I know especially I just happened to get better acquainted with a new couple that just moved in across the street who have triplets. So it's nice to see young kids in the neighborhood again. I believe that public leadership really requires both strategic knowledge and responsibility, and then that's going to lead to successful outcomes. I recently retired from working about 38 years at the Social Security Administration, had some previous government experience with the Veterans Administration, and during my tenure at Social Security I began in public claims service and I was later elected by my peers to union leadership, becoming the chief steward, where I was the leader for all of the employees at the Social Security field offices throughout the state of Minnesota. So I traveled extensively, not only throughout the state of Minnesota, but also into North and South Dakota and Wisconsin. And then I led the local as president, but then working as in the administration and management with Social Security. I had a series of assignments in project manager in project management, including as a field office manager. And that was for several key process improvement initiatives. I led facilitation, I did negotiation, and I also did outcome management for interdisciplinary teams. And my experience in service and organizing and administration matched the key skills that are required for service to the people of Golden Valley on the council.
Right.
My life and work experience drive me to deliver thoughtful leadership that worked for all, that would lead to the kind of successful outcomes that we all hope for.
Thank you. And now I'll let you pick through some of those issues that we talked about. Just one of them, not in any given order, but one that you'd like to share with our audience
I think
tonight.
that Jillian did a really great job of articulating some of the big concerns for the area, and I share those. And I think I'd start off with transportation, especially in the neighborhood that I live. I live about 2.5 blocks from where the light rail would be going through in the near future here. I see a lot, in talking to people in the neighborhoods, I am hearing various concerns and fears about what some of those changes in our communities will lead to. And I think that it's going to be, as Jillian had already mentioned, it's about 90% there. And at this point, I think it's much like she said, talking about the connections that we make in our community, so that people get to those daily destinations, whether they're leisure, work, school, whatever. Those are the things that are important to the people in our community. And how we make those connections is going to be kind of the implementation phase, which I think is going to be moved to the front of the whole thing over the next 4 years or so.
Yeah, it is a project that takes several years to put together, right?
Right, and I think that she also accurately stated that it's not just vehicular traffic. We're going to be seeing self-driving cars quicker than we're going to be thinking about it. But bikes are, the use has become magnified in Golden Valley, as it is throughout the metro area. As a metro area, we're a leader in that, and we're going to just see more and more of that same thing. And also paths, walkways, and we can already see through the strategic plan that a lot of the planning and vision that we've seen for that is actually coming into fruition now as we incorporate those things into the other improvements that we make in our community.
Okay, second issue that you want to share with our audience tonight?
Well, I think I kind of touched on it with the comprehensive plan. I think the city and all of the residents have really done a wonderful job of kind of slowly crafting this vision of what we want our neighborhoods and community to be in the future. And I think over the next 4 years, we're going to be moving to implement those things. And as they say, it's the proof is in the pudding, or there are a lot of other analogies that we could make. But I think that that's where the kind of decision-making process that I've developed and used, where I've correctly identified who the stakeholders are. In this case, it's the residents, the people who work in our communities, but then looking not only at those stakeholders, but identifying what their interests are. And sometimes that means boiling down those interests to find out what the basic fears are, or what those interests really are, and then crafting solutions that would be based on that interests model, and then drawing those people together so there's consensus and there's support in the community as we move forward into the future.
And that takes time to put all that together.
Oh yes, it does. And it's a deliberative process, and I think that if you know the right process and you're willing to to stick with that in a thoughtful manner, I think it leads you to the best outcomes.
Okay, let's have a third topic that you'd like to share.
Well, I think one of the things that we can do to move into the future is to acknowledge the kind of debt load that we have.
Okay.
We've spent a lot of time and energy putting in new infrastructure as far as our streets and our sewer, both sanitary
Right.
and other sewer systems. And we've built up a little higher level of debt than some of the other suburbs in the surrounding areas. And another thing that's been a factor here is the new community center, which is going to be opening in December.
Right.
And those things have led to a little higher debt level. Now, I don't think that those were bad decisions. I think that they were prudent. I think they were thoughtful decisions. But I think right now we have a unique opportunity to try to restructure that debt and bring it down so that if we come into things like water mitigation or things like that, that may be problems from our community in the future, that we can successfully deal with those challenges as they arise.
Right. Oh, lots of good, thoughtful ideas on what you want to see happen, right?
Well, I hope so.
Now, I gave her a chance, and now it's your chance to talk to those people out in Golden Valley and say why they should vote and check your name off on the ballot come November 7th.
Well, I think what I've done throughout my career and my life experience is I've been a strong and thoughtful advocate for large groups of people, constituencies, employees, citizens, people who have some skin in the game, you could say.
Right.
But I've been an advocate for those people by providing the kind of leadership skills to those stakeholders, understanding their interests, and finding equitable solutions in a thoughtful manner within the resources provided toward community progress.
And then just to tuck in the same topic, what are you hearing from people as you get out in the community? What are people sharing with you that maybe you hadn't thought of or surprised you? Or
Well, I don't think it's necessarily been a big surprise, but I think transportation issues, as we've talked about here, some aspects of it are very controversial. The location of transit stations and how they're going to accommodate the needs of the people in our community, especially those who maybe have transportation challenges right now. It's even access, making sure that people are not, that our roadways to those transit stations are not congested, for example. But there are a lot of concerns. I think that the process that we've gone through and will continue to go through will help alleviate the fears that people have about that. And I think we can craft solutions that really are going to best serve our community. And I think that we have to trust the process on that, but we also have to articulate that to the citizens who feel like they really haven't had a voice on the council. We need to be able to not only be that voice, but to explain that and be transparent in the decision-making process. Another thing is trash hauling policies. Kind of caught me by surprise, but I've heard from people on both sides, and I think that that's just going to be a recurrent issue. But I think that there are reasonable long-range ways that we can put that on the agenda for discussion, but not revisit on a continuing or frequent basis. And then housing issues. I think there are a lot of concerns, and I think that there are a lot of challenges in how the character of Golden Valley will change or meet the changes needed to meet the needs of the citizens and people who will be working in our community.
Yeah, we are at a time of a fair amount of change staring us in the face right now.
Well, and that I think that that's fairly reasonable. People throughout history have always been fearful of some of the changes that could happen. But without change, you can't really have things better.
Well, now we're going to encourage those of you out there, be sure to take the time to gather information about, if you live in Golden Valley, gather information about the candidates. You can get information from our program tonight. You can get it from the League of Women Voters. You can get it from the Sun Post articles. I think everyone has a website, so there's lots of places that you can go to gather information about the candidates. Be sure to take time, because there's 2 city council positions up for election, and we hope that you'll make a thoughtful vote. And the other thing we want to encourage is that if you aren't sure if you're registered to vote, you can go to the Minnesota Secretary of State site. There is a place there that when you put a little information in, they can tell you if you're registered or not, because that's number 1 that you need to do. You can register on election day if you're not registered, but you can go to the Secretary of State site and find out whether you're registered or not. You can go to the Secretary of State site within a certain time frame and register to vote.
I think that's closed.
Yeah, but you can also register to vote on election day.
Yes.
So there's
Right.
a number of opportunities, and if you aren't quite sure what's going to be on your ballot, the Secretary of State site will also give you the opportunity to find out exactly what's on your ballot, because sometimes you end up with all these judges and you don't know who they are. You can look at it ahead of time and seek out information so you know who you're voting for. And then I asked both of you just before we got on the air to think a little bit about a question that was that I saw in the Sun Post of if there's some things that you want to prioritize and say, all right, this is something I'd really like to see happen if I got elected. I'll start out with you, Jillian.
Great. Well, my passion really is connectivity. And so I really appreciate the work that the Bike and Pedestrian Task Force
Okay.
has done in our community. And I would really like to see as many of those gaps in our system and many of those connections be made. They have correctly identified a lot of different ways that we can improve the mobility around Golden Valley by bike, by foot, by wheelchair, by differently abled people, both for leisure, both for work, both for for exercise,
Right.
for all of those different things. And I think that we have an opportunity to be creative and to be strategic, and I'd really like to see that happen.
And Jim.
Well, I think the thing that hasn't been part of our discussion right now
Right.
that I would like to make to bring in and make part of it is that Golden Valley recently completed an evaluation that was recommended by the League of Minnesota Cities.
Okay.
What we need to be doing is to create and implement updated policies in employment that would be expanding efforts to recruit and retain a diverse workforce.
Right.
I think that'll be really critical for the future of our community. Second, to review the city policies and documents to be sure there is no institutional bias. And see where we can be more proactive about wages and diversity in project requirements. And then lastly, we need to look at how we can make sure that our police force remains one of the best in the metro area
Right.
here by considering additional initiatives around race and equity.
It's out there, and we encourage you out there to sign to watch next week. We'll have another group of candidates on, but do take the time to gather information and make a thoughtful choice, and be sure to go vote on November 7th.